Welcome to the first lecture of network synthesis. In this lecture, we are going to study about the network functions and the conditions for those network functions under which we can synthesize these functions into a physical network. During these conditions, we will encounter two terms, which is positive real functions and Hurwitz polynomial. We will see about that also. And then we will study about the removal of poles at infinity and origin, and also the removal of conjugate pairs of poles and constant. So we will see. So till now we have been studying different methods and different things about network analysis in which a particular network was given, and for this network, if there was some excitation, suppose the excitation was in the form of voltage, and then we had to find the response, which can be either in the form of voltage or current across a load. So till now we have done many methods of network analysis, be it in DC or AC domains, and we studied about all these network theorems to make these calculations or the analysis of networks easy. But now in the network synthesis, whatever we will be doing will be just opposite. So we will be given the response, let me call it RS, and we will also be given an excitation, let me call it as ES. So both these response and excitation can be anything like voltage or current. So response can either be voltage or current, and excitation can also be voltage or current. So I have written it in the form of S, which means whatever we will be given will be in the form of Laplace transformed version. So we will be given these response and excitation, or maybe the ratio of these two things, and then we will have to derive circuit or synthesize circuit. So synthesis means making or synthesizing something. So from these response and excitations, or the ratio of them, we will have to synthesize a network. So this chapter is all about this. So in the books or in the lecture videos anywhere, you will see something like this, Fs, which can also be written as Hs, and it will be the ratio of response to the excitation. So this function is basically called network function. So this network function, so example, if this RS is in the form of voltage and ES is in the form of current, then this HS can be written as Vs upon Is. And what is the ratio of voltage to the current? It is nothing but impedance. So this will represent the impedance of the circuit. This network function will ultimately represent the impedance of the circuit. Now, on the contrary to that, if this HS is basically, if this RS is IS, which is in the form of current, and ES is in the form of voltage, then just opposite thing will happen, and this HS will now represent the admittance function, right? So this HS function or FS function, whatever you can see in any book or lecture video, this function will either represent the impedance function or the admittance function, and collectively this ZS and YS function, collectively they are called emittance function. IMMITANC, emittance function, right? So you just have to remember this, and only these two conditions we will have, and we'll have to see some conditions depending on which we will be able to synthesize this network function into a real physical network, and see what are the different kinds and methodologies by which we can synthesize our networks. Now, this network function, which can either be written as Fs or Hs depending on your convenience, can be represented in the form of the polynomial of S, right? So it is basically the ratio of response to the excitation, and the numerator can be written as an s to the power n plus an minus 1 s to the power n minus 1, and so on, then go back to a naught. And similarly, the denominator here, an minus 1, a1 and a naught, etc., are the coefficients, and this n is basically the order, which is the maximum degree of s in the numerator, and similarly m is the order of the denominator, which is the maximum degree of s in the denominator. So this is how we represent. And if some of you might be having some questions in your mind, let me give you an example how we can write any network function like this. So let us take this circuit in which there is a voltage source Vs and a current Is is flowing, and there is a inductor, resistor, and a capacitor. So a 1 Henry inductor will be represented as 1s or just s, as we have studied in the Laplace transformed analysis of the AC circuits. And we are assuming that this inductor was not charged initially, so there will not be any voltage source in series with it. And then there is a resistance 1 ohm and a capacitor of 1 farad, which will be equivalent to 1 upon s in the Laplace domain. So if you write the KVL, you will get Vs is equal to SIs plus Is into 1, which is resistance, plus Is into 1 upon s. So we can write it as Is we take common, then we will get s plus 1 by s. So finally we will get Vs upon Is if I take Is to the denominator in the left hand side, and let me call this as Hs. So it will become s square plus s plus 1 divided by s. So now you can see there is a polynomial which is the representation of the ratio of Vs and Is, which we can call it as our network function. And here this A2 is basically 1, this is 1, and similarly A1 is also 1 and A0 is also 1. Here also you see that B1 is 1 and other constants are 0. So this is how we represent any circuit in the form of polynomials, right? Now there will be 3 types of circuit realizations you will see in this chapter. The first one is series circuits, which is also called Foster one form, and we will be seeing about these in details. So in this form, whatever the circuit you will realize, the elements will be coming into series. So this is how you are going to see. So suppose if it is a ZS function, you are going to see things in series. And in parallel circuit, it is also called Foster 2 form. And in this circuit, you will be seeing the elements coming in parallel. So we are going to study about these in detail anyway. And then you will see ladder kind of circuits, which is also divided in 2 parts, cover 1 and cover 2 forms. And in ladder circuits, you will see one element will be in series, then other will be in parallel, and then again one will be in series, and then again will be in parallel. So this is a ladder kind of circuit that you are going to see. So these forms of circuits fall under cover form. So how do we get these forms? The Foster forms, either Foster 1 or Foster 2 forms, these forms you will get by using partial fraction method. So we will be doing partial fractions on our network functions to find these Foster 1 and Foster 2 forms, and we will be doing a method called continued fraction, through which we will be getting the cover form of circuits, right? So continued fraction and partial fraction. So we will be seeing about these later. Now coming back to the all important part of this topic, necessary conditions for the physical network synthesis from a given network function. So suppose if somebody gives you any arbitrary network function as HS, will it be possible to make a physical circuit out of any arbitrarily given network function? No. If someone gives you anything, you will not be able to make a physical circuit because it may be impractical, or it may not be practically possible to implement any of these functions. So there are certain conditions only after which you will be able to synthesize your network from a given network function HS, right? So to check whether any function HS or network function HS can be realized as a physical network or not, we basically check 2 things. The first thing is called causality, and the second thing is called stability. So what does causality means? As the name suggests, there should be a cause for any reaction. So suppose you have a circuit, and there is a voltage which you will apply, and there will be a current flowing into the circuit. So tell me if it is possible to have a current without applying any voltage. Is it possible? The current will flow only after you apply the voltage in the circuit. Before this application of voltage, it is not possible to have any current. So you must have a function, a network function, where the response is only attained after the cause is given, or the excitation is given. So this all things comes under the causality. And second phenomena that you will be seeking is the stability of the function. So suppose if you are giving a voltage and current keeps increasing and increasing towards infinity, so can you call it as a stable network? No, it will be an unstable network, where for given limited input, you are getting a unlimited output. So you have to check whether your system functions is stable or not. So there are certain criteria and methodologies by which we check these two things, causality and stability. So let me give you some examples to understand better these causality and stability phenomena. So if we first talk about the causality, suppose you have a response IT and you have excitation VT, right? So suppose at exactly time is t is equal to 0, you started your excitation VT. So you have given your excitation VT. But somehow, if this current IT has already existed before time t is equal to 0, then can you call this system as a causal system? No, you cannot, because even before you applied your voltage, some current was already there and you don't know how it came. So this cannot be called as a causal system. But now in the second case, if you have applied a voltage here exactly at time t is equal to 0, the voltage is applied and now the current starts flowing, then you can say that this system is a causal system. So if the system function is represented as Hs, then its inverse Laplace transform can be represented as Ht. So there is a condition for causality, which is Ht should be equal to 0 for t less than 0. Hs is basically the response of an excitation. So it is understandable that for t less than 0, or when the excitation is not given, there should not be any response. So Ht is equal to 0 for t less than 0. So you are going to study about these things in detail, about the causality and more about the stability, in the subjects called signals and systems, and also control systems. So these two subjects you are going to get in future, and you are going to study everything in very good detail about the causality and stability of a system and the different kind of signals and all. So we will just be talking basic things so that we can move in our course related to network theory. Now coming to stability, let me tell you, if Hs is given upon 1 upon S plus A, right? Hs is given as 1 upon S plus A. Let me go to the second page. You have a system function as 1 upon S plus A. Can you tell me what will be the inverse Laplace transform of this function? We already discussed in the initially in the Laplace transform. Then it will be equal to e to the power minus at ut. So ut is the unit step function that ensures your signal starts from t is equal to 0. So if you plot this, how will it look? E to the power minus at into ut. It will look like this, right? So it will slowly go towards 0. So this is basically your inverse Laplace of this Hs function Ht. So your Ht will start from 1 and slowly it will go towards 0 when the time tends to infinity. So is it a stable system or not? It is definitely a stable system, because as the time moves ahead, your response is going towards 0. So there is a plane called S plane, and you already know that S you can represent at sigma plus j omega. So there is a real part and there is an imaginary part. So if you call this as S plane, This real part will be represented by sigma, and this imaginary part will be represented as j omega. So if this is j omega, this is minus j omega, and this will be minus sigma, right, in this direction. So for any function, for example, there is a function fs is equal to s plus p divided by s plus q, then you can say that whatever is it in the denominator, this value will give you s is equal to minus q, and this minus q is called the pole of this function fs. And this s, if you equate it to the zero, the numerator, you will get s is equal to minus p. This is called the zero of this function fs. So this is how we define poles and zeros. So zeros are those points of the function at which the whole functions becomes zero. So if suppose if you put s is equal to minus p in this function, what will happen? If you put minus p plus p will become zero, and you will get a zero of that function. So zeros are those points at which you will get zero, and poles are those points at which you will get infinity from this function. So if you put s is equal to minus q in this function, you will get something upon zero, and then this whole thing will become infinity. So poles are those points where system functions become infinity, and zeros are those points where system function becomes zero. So these points, these poles and zeros, can be represented in this s plane. And what is the pole? S is equal to minus q, and since this is minus and real, we will represent it on a real axis, and let me call it as minus q. And then your zero is also in the left hand side, and let me call it here. Let me say that it is here, minus p point, and zero is represented as a zero, pole is represented as a cross. So this is how you represent your poles and zeros in the s plane. So coming back to our original hs function, we can see from here that s is equal to minus a is your pole. So you can represent this minus a as here. And as you can see that if this pole is in the negative half of the s plane, your system function is going to represent a stable system, because after a certain time this response is going to be towards zero. Similarly, if I take a different example, let me call hs is equal to 1 upon s minus a. So in this case, what will be your ht or inverse Laplace? It will be e to the power at ut. So how will you represent e to the power at? Let me not call it as a, let me call it as minus p. Let us take some other variable. So e to the power pt ut. So if you represent this function, what you are going to see is that your function will start from 1 and it will exponentially increase as the time t increases, right? If you take inverse Laplace of this function, you will get e to the power pt ut, which is going towards infinity as you increase the time. So is this function stable or unstable? It is definitely an unstable function, because response is going towards infinity. So where do you represent what is the value of pole? P. So here s is equal to p. This is your pole. So now this p pole has come into the right hand side of the s plane on the real axis. So you can see that if your pole is in the right hand side of the s plane, then your system is becoming unstable. And if your pole is in the left hand side of the s plane, then again your system is becoming stable. Then your system is stable. So for the stability criteria for any given function hs, the poles of this system should be in the left hand side of the s plane. And there is a special case also, we are just going to discuss it. Now coming back to the conditions for the realization of any network function into a physical network. The first condition is that the network function fs or hs should be a positive real function, which is also called PRF. So what is the conditions for a positive real function? So the first condition for a positive real function is that the fs or hs should be real when s is real. Let me write it more clearly. So when your s is real, this network function hs should also be real. The second condition is the real part of HS should be greater than equal to 0 when real part of S is greater than equal to 0. So for any given function HS, its real part should be positive or 0 when the real part of S, which is sigma, is positive or 0. And the third condition for any function being a positive real function is that Fs must be a rational function. You must be knowing what is rational and irrational. So Fs must be a Fs or Hs. So I'm just toggling between Fs and Hs, both are same. So Hs is a rational function. So what these three conditions indicate? Actually, you know that if you have a function Zs, then Zs can be made of resistance, some resistance, plus minus a complex imaginary part, which will be because of the inductor or capacitor in the circuit. So I can write it as plus minus Jx. So this real part is always a resistance, and it is never negative. For any network circuit, resistance can never be negative, so it has to be positive. And also uh, uh, besides resistor, your inductor and your capacitor, all these things have a value which is greater than equal to 0. So these values cannot be physically negative, right? Can resistance be negative? No. Inductance, capacitance, resistance can only be positive. So this is why, this is the inference by which we can say that our functions Fs or Hs, which basically represent either Zs or Ys, which is basically the reciprocal of Zs, should be a positive real function. Its real part should always be positive. And all these things only support this basic idea. Now coming to the properties of positive real function, we have seen the polynomial representation of this system function Hs here in the previous slide. If you can see, Fs or Hs we have represented like this, numerator and denominator polynomials, and these an minus 1, an a naught, and then bm minus 1, and so on, then b naught. These are all the coefficients where n and m are the degrees of numerator and denominator respectively. So coming to the properties of positive real function, for any function Hs to be positive real, all these coefficient an minus 1, and so on to a naught, and then bm minus 1, and so on to b naught, must be positive and real. So they cannot be imaginary, or they cannot be negative if they are real. So the second property is that if a function Hs is a positive real function, then its reciprocal, which is 1 by Hs, will also be a positive real function. And the third property is that if H1s and H2s are two positive real functions, then their summation will also be a positive real function. So you can study about these positive real functions and everything in detail in network analysis and synthesis by Van Valkenburg. So everything is given in very detail. So we don't need to actually go into that detail for the purpose of our this lecture. So if you want to dig into that, you can just follow the book for reference. Now coming back to the conditions for the network synthesis, the nominator and denominator of the Hs must be Hurwitz polynomial. Now what is this Hurwitz polynomial? Actually it has to be related to the stability of the system. So Hurwitz, if a polynomial is Hurwitz, it will be representing that the system is stable. So let us see what is Hurwitz polynomial. So Hurwitz polynomials are those whose roots are either in the left hand side of the S-plane, or if they are on the imaginary axis, they are simple, which means they don't repeat on a single point on the imaginary axis. So we'll see that. So for Hs to be realized, to be able to be realized, both these nominators and denominator of Hs should be Hurwitz polynomial, which means if both the numerator and denominator has their roots in the left hand side of the H plane, then we can say that both the poles and zeros of Hs must be in the left hand side of the S plane. And if they are on the imaginary axis, which says the second point, if they are on the imaginary axis, then they must be in conjugate pair. Like if one is at plus j omega, then other one must be at minus j omega, and they must be simple, which means that there should not be two poles or two zeros at the single point in the imaginary axis. So you will be getting more clear to it in the next slide. So we have already seen that if the poles is in the left hand side of the S plane, suppose S plus A is there, which means your pole is S is equal to minus A. So you can write the time equivalent or inverse Laplace of this function as e to the power minus at ut, which is basically represented by this exponentially decreasing graph. So this is a stable function. So you already seen this. Let us see the imaginary part or the complex conjugate part. So suppose if you have a function called some constant divided by s square plus a square. So what does this function represent? This basically represent a sinusoidal function. Let me call it as omega, s square plus omega square. So this function will represent a sinusoidal function as sine omega t multiplied by ut. Ut you have to multiply if you're taking inverse Laplace transform. So how will you represent this function? This will be represented like this simple sinusoidal function in the time domain. So this function is basically bounded, but it is oscillating between 2 points continuously. So it is called, it is basically stable, but critically stable. Well, it means that it is just between the stability and instability. So it is not going to get settled at a particular point. It is going to oscillate, but it is critically stable system. But what happens if and can you first tell me the poles, what will be the poles for this particular function? Let me call it as hs. So what will be the pole? S is equal to plus minus j omega, obviously. So if you represent this on a s plane, there will be one pole at j omega and there will be another pole at minus j omega. So this is your s plane. So now you can see that the poles are on the this imaginary axis, j omega axis, but they are simple. They are in complex conjugate. One is plus j omega and other is minus j omega, and they are simple. So you can say that your system is still stable. It is not unstable. But what will happen if you have a function like this, a upon s square plus omega square whole squared? So now you can say that your poles are now not simple. You will be having poles as plus j omega and again plus minus j omega. So if you want to represent this on the S plane, what will happen? Let me see in the next slide. We had hs is equal to 1 upon s square plus, let me call it as constant a, omega square whole squared. So we have poles as plus minus j omega and also one more j omega plus minus. And if I represent this on S plane, so you will have two poles on a single point plus j omega, and here also you will have two poles on a single point minus j omega. So now your poles are not simple. So can you tell me what will happen to its stability? So to tell, let us take inverse Laplace transform of this particular function. So what will be the inverse Laplace transform of this function? You just go and check. You will get t into something like sine omega t. So this is from the properties of Laplace transform, and you have to basically revise your Laplace transform from mathematics. So you will get a t multiplied if you take the square of denominator. I'm not worrying about the constant. You just see the function. So if you plot this function, what will happen? You will see that there will be a sinusoidal wave which will be increasing with t. It will be continuously increasing with t because the t is multiplied, obviously. So is it stable now? No. As the time t increases towards infinity, the system amplitude is also oscillatingly going towards infinity. So now this system is not stable. This is unstable, which means if you have multiple poles or not simple poles, more than one poles on the imaginary axis at the same point, then you are going to get an unstable system. So that is why this second condition was here. Imaginary poles and zeros must be in conjugate pair and must be simple. They must not repeat on the imaginary axis, right? So these are the conditions for system to be stable. And now we are going to write a little more about these Hurwitz polynomial. So these were basically the properties of Hurwitz polynomial itself, where the roots of this Hurwitz polynomial must be lying in the left hand side of the S-plane, and if these roots are on the imaginary axis, they must be simple and in conjugate pair. So let us write a few more properties of Hurwitz polynomial and then we move forward. We actually have already seen the properties of Hurwitz here. These are basically the two properties of Hurwitz. The first of which is the roots must be in the left hand side of the S-plane, and second is that if they are on the imaginary axis, they must be simple. So those were actually the properties of Hurwitz. Now we will use this base to define two or three more conditions which is necessary for HS to follow for us to be able to realize a physical network from HS or synthesize a physical network from HS. So first of which property is that this m minus n must be less than equal to 1. And what was this m minus n? So you remember this polynomial here. So the n was the highest power of nominator and m was the highest power of denominator, or you can say that n was the degree of nominator and m was the degree of denominator. So the difference between these m and n must not be greater than 1 in any case. So this m minus n difference must be less than equal to 1. So we will see why is it so. And this thing will ensure, if m minus 1 is less than 1, this will ensure that there are no poles and zeros at infinity. So this thing will ensure that there are no more than one poles or zeros. So this will be actually or at infinity. So what does it mean? How poles and zeros can be at infinity? This all must be coming in your mind. So let us see. If you have a polynomial HS is equal to S plus A, S plus B divided by S plus P, S plus Q into S plus R. So what is the degree of nominator? Basically, if S is multiplied here, you will get your N is equal to 2. And you can easily see that this will have a degree of M is equal to 3. So what is the difference between M and N? It is 1. So 3 minus 2 is 1. So in control system, there is a topic called root locus. So in the root locus, what happens is on the S plane, we point out all these poles and zeros. Let me call it like this. So we point out all these poles and zeros, and we change the gain of the system. Gain is basically the constant value in the nominator, which is changed. So what we see is that these poles move towards these zeros. All the poles move towards these zeros. So any system function, when its gain value is changed from 0 to infinity, you will see that the system function will move from a pole towards the 0. So this phenomena is always like it is always true. But suppose if your function has in the given example, how many zeros you can see? There are only 2 zeros, right? And how many poles you have? You have 3 poles. So what will happen is that your pole is moving towards 0 and you have 2 zeros but 3 poles. So where will the third pole go? It has to go somewhere, na? It has to go at some destination. So what is seen is that in a function like this, where 1 0 is less, you will see that this pole will move towards either by this direction or whatever direction it can take. It will move towards infinity. You will see that the extra pole is always moving towards infinity, And if that happens, you have to assume that there is a 1 0 which is resting at infinity where this pole is moving. So this topic is you are going to understand more clearly when you study control system in detail, and specifically root locus, this root locus topic. So since we are not going into control system, I just want to tell you that if there is a difference between the degree of nominator and denominator, and whatever is the difference between these degrees, there will be equal number of poles or zeros residing at infinity. So it has to come. Similarly, if you have, suppose, total zeros is equal to 3 and total poles is equal to 2, so in that case you will have, suppose, 2 poles but 3 zeros. So what will happen is this pole will go to this 0, this pole will go to this 0 if you increase the gain. But what will happen to this 0? There must be a root coming from somewhere from infinity coming towards this 0. So you will have to assume that there is an infinity, there is a pole residing at the infinity. So what I mean to say is, if numerator degree is greater than denominator degree, then pole exists at infinity, and if the denominator degree is greater than numerator degree, then zeros exists at infinity. So in your condition, if you come back to your condition, these difference in these degrees, which is basically m minus n, must be less than equal to 1. What does it mean? There must not be more than 1 poles or zeros at infinity. So suppose if the if the nominator power is greater than denominator power by 1, there will be only 1 pole at infinity. If it is greater than 1, like if the difference is 2, there will be multiple poles at infinity, and basically what will happen is, in the time domain, this system will become unstable. So we are not going into that. You just have to remember that the highest power of nominator and denominator, which is the degrees of nominator and denominator, must differ at most by 1. So this will ensure that maximum 1 poles or zeros are residing at infinity. Similarly, the second case, now the lowest power of numerator, nominator or denominator of HS must be at most differ by 1. So in the previous case, we talked about the maximum power, which was the order of numerator and denominator. Um, uh, in the second case, we have the lowest power of nominator and denominator, which must not be differ by more than 1. So what does it mean? Suppose if you have a polynomial s square plus s plus 1, and in the denominator you have s square plus s, right? So you can say that you can write it as s square plus s plus 1 divided by s taken common, and then you will get s plus 1. So you have one pole which is at origin. So what will be the roots? S is equal to minus 1, and this will give s is equal to 0. So in the s plane, you have one pole at origin. So we have already seen that you must not have multiple poles at the j omega axis. So this origin is basically going through this j omega axis, right? So you should not have multiple poles or multiple zeros at this origin point. So here you see that the difference between the lowest power, what is the lowest power of nominator? It is 0. And what is the lowest power of the nominator? It is 1. So what is the difference? The difference is 1. So if the difference is 1, so since there is only one power difference in the minimum values of powers in denominator and numerator, you will get only single pole at the origin, and your system will be stable. But in some cases, suppose if you have something like this, if you have s cube plus s square, so what will happen in this case? In this case, you can take s square as common, and you will get s plus 1. So you will get 2 poles at the origin. And you will see, if you convert this function into the time domain function, you will see that the system will become unstable. So that is why the second condition is that the lowest power of nominator and denominator of HS must not be differ more than by 1. So this will prohibit multiple poles or zeros at origin, right?